On the panel this week, writer and Fox News contributor Judy Miller, conservative columnist Andrea Tantaros, Jim Pinkerton, fellow New America Foundation, and Fox radio host Alan Colmes. I'm John Scott. Fox News Watch is on right now.
The president made his opening bid in the next budget battle with a blistering speech that could also serve as the first salvo in his re-election campaign.
The president said the two parties have come together before. They can do it again. But along with that olive branch, he was carrying a baseball bat.
Make no mistake, this speech was a policy speech, but also one with sharp political tones. The president spent nearly as much time ripping the Republicans' leading plan as he did talking about his own.
Well, that's how the network Big Three newscasts and most of the mainstream media recounted Mr. Obama's budget speech this week. But here's a view which most in the media seemed to ignore.
It's 18 months from the election, and the president's out there giving a campaign speech as opposed to saying something serious about how we deal with the debt limit and how we deal with the fiscal crisis that we face. I can't tell you how disappointed I was in what the president had to say. Because yesterday morning I had the idea that he understood we had a big problem, and he understood that we had to deal with it and had to deal with it now. And then he goes out and gives a speech that the only real concrete thing that he offered was, again, raising more taxes.
Andrea, let's go to you first for reaction. The Speaker of the House's comments there didn't get the same kind of attention the president's speech did. And the media seemed to like the idea of taxing the wealthy and so forth as proposed by the president.
Yes, and they also didn't do their diligence to look at the funky budgeting that the president's doing. He uses 12-year scoring when it suits his needs. The CBO only scores up to 10 years. A lot of these costs, and Bloomberg did do some due diligence, are back-ended. So really, journalists, I know it's tough to get into the details, but if you really want to cover the president and you want to cover him fairly when he's supposed to give a policy speech, you look at the accounting and you look at the numbers. And the media failed to do that. I will say, though, Ezra Klein from the Washington Post called him out. He was fair. And he said, you know, this is based on the Bowles-Simpson deficit reduction plan. If the president was such a fan of this plan, why wasn't it part of his budget in December? That's
a great question. Did conservatives whine when they didn't get enough coverage to the speaker and the speaker happened to be Nancy Pelosi? Oh, we didn't hear what the speaker had to say. It got lots of coverage. There were lots of pros and cons about this speech all over the media. And I didn't realize that Boehner was suffering from lack of press coverage.
Well, but he did call it, Speaker Boehner did call it a campaign speech. Did the press pick up on that?
I think they kind of did in a way because they love that. As Andrea was suggesting, they would much rather talk about baseball bats and images like that and blistering and using those kind of words than actually getting into the details of this, and which would force them to realize just how small and pathetic, as Clive Crook called this speech, in terms of actually cutting, Clive Crook of the Atlantic, actually cutting the budget. Or have any prospect, therefore.
What about the proposal that Congressman Ryan put forward? I mean, Republicans have put a lot of faith in this proposal. The president knocked it down. He said that the Ryan budget calls for tax cuts for the wealthy that would mean that Medicare patients wouldn't be able to get the kind of service that they are expecting if they're younger than 55. What about all that?
Well, that set the tone. I mean, as long as Paul Ryan's going to offer that kind of proposal, it leaves a wide open door for the Democrats to say, here is the philosophical difference between Republicans and Democrats. Democrats do not believe that the cutting of the social safety net should almost equal identically what we're going to give the wealthy in tax breaks.
Let's talk about the digital media for a second, because how about the fact that the Heritage Foundation, which backed Ryan's plan, took down, scrubbed his original numbers, took them down off the site because they couldn't back them up. Right. How about that? They couldn't back up those numbers.
Let's hear what Congressman Ryan had to say himself about the president's plan.
When the president is ready to get serious about it, we're going to be here working. Exploiting people's emotions of fear, envy, and anxiety is not hope. It's not change. It's partisanship.
This is the same Ryan who said that the president wants to poison wells? He's not explaining.
Well, that was
Come on.
that was his reaction.
First you, then
Alan,
me. Go ahead.
It was political demagoguery in its crudest form. And I would point out, Slate's John Dickerson came out and he actually outlined the strategy of this president. Let people like Paul Ryan and the Republicans lead, and then we'll demagogue them until Election Day. And that is exactly what the president is going to do, and he will have a very all-too-willing mainstream media to tell the tales of the autistic children that they're implying Republicans want to hurt.
Just for the record, Paul Ryan did not advocate poisoning wells. He was using a figure of speech.
No, he said that's what the president wants to do, Jim. That's what he said. That's what the president wants to do.
As a figure of speech, Alan, not.
Oh, I see.
He said he's not building bridges, he's poisoning wells.
Yes,
Come on.
That's what he said. I'm saying that's what he said.
I think that Mark
That's
Halperin,
fear-mongering.
I think that Mark Halperin made a very good point. He said if a Republican president had gotten up and said that my opponents are un-American, that their approach is un-American, that the Democrat and Republican is fine, un-American is strong language, there would have been holy you-know-what from the media about really playing a dirty card.
How many times has the president been called un-American or Kenyan worldview or not born here?
Not by mainstream press.
Oh, come on, by people who get covered all the time by the mainstream press. The mainstream press runs with a camera as quickly as possible to anybody who says that about the president.
But what about the fear-mongering? I mean, is what the president was accused of that by Republicans. Did the press pick up on that? Is that what he was doing?
Of course the press picked up on it because it was a very political speech. And Doug Schoen, who is a Democratic pollster, who was Bill Clinton's pollster, called it, let's see, unfortunate, unconstructive, and unhelpful.
So he doesn't like Obama very much.
It's not only.
He's never liked Obama.
He doesn't like Obama, but aside from that, he didn't like the speech. Now, other people love the speech because it said, aha, Obama's awake.
One of those who loved the speech, NBC's David Gregory, who said afterwards that the Democratic president is finding his groove, and he said the Republicans, the House Republicans, are crazy.
No, he's essentially, Barack Obama was essentially saying to his base in that speech as well, baby, come back, right? He was singing that old player tune to them. And some were convinced and others were still very, very angry. New Republic was very angry at him for still supporting the Bush tax cuts and all the other programs.
I really love that song.